So we're in for a treat this evening because we have with us a person who is the ultimate expression of a woman of the theater. There is no aspect of this quite magical art that she has not lived, done, created, transformed. So we'll try to get...
Except for sound design.
Can you hear? I missed the comment.
Except for sound design, I'm terrified of running sound. That's
okay. I'm not going to ask her about sound. My job is to try to figure out how to get the most out of this woman, and you'll help me. So I'll start by asking a few questions, and then we'll open it up, and you'll get a chance at this woman. Her latest venture is to take on a play called The Trojan Women in its original form. She's, of course, altered the name to Her Name Means Memory. In the canon of Greek theater, which is extraordinary, actually, if you have nothing better to do, just pick up Oedipus and take a shot at it. She's chosen probably by far the most difficult of those works to make come alive, partly because the act of suffering is a particularly passive activity. It's not active. And the Trojan Women is profoundly and deeply a tragedy of suffering. So after a while you'd say, yeah, I feel sorry for these people, but enough. She's got to make that work. And one of the things we'll find out tonight is how she goes about doing that. Let me start by then asking her why she chose, of all the spectacular plays in the Greek canon, the most difficult of them all, The Trojan Women.
Well, I didn't think of it as the most difficult play. I've done several Greek tragedies early in my career. Starting in 1981 for Juilliard. And I remember I was at a library when I read it the first time, the Lincoln Center Library for Performing Arts in New York, where I live. And I was gobsmacked by the freshness of the writing. But I thought, you know, some of those references I don't really understand. So I went on to do that and several more at Williamstown and Columbia University. But when Russia invaded Ukraine and the femicides in Iran started to happen and the Mexican women were disappeared and now India is having femicides, I thought, wow, this is amazing that women are used as weapons of war still. The first time this was dealt with theatrically was Euripides' The Trojan Women. And because I have this enduring love for Greek tragedy, I thought, well, as a citizen artist, this is what I should do. I should take this play on. I should start a conversation with Euripides. And I've written other plays. This wasn't my first rodeo. So I began to look at the play and I rewrote it so that the thing about suffering is that in Euripides' time, women had not much agency in the culture. But one of the things they did was lament at funerals. So Euripides made The Trojan Women a play of lamentation. It makes sense. It's sort of like you're doing a play today down south about something and you would use Baptist singing. You know, it's a similar kind of idea. And so I thought, okay, but it needs to be more active. In my version, Hecuba is fighting in every single scene to save her women to save her daughter Cassandra, to save Astyanax, her grandson, who could ostensibly grow up and come back to Troy and rebuild the civilization. So I thought it's interesting that Euripides would write a play about women as weapons of war, because it's still happening more than 2,000 years later. So I have done what I wanted to do in terms of finding equivalencies for all those references in the Greek tragedy that we don't understand as 21st centurions. So I've made them more accessible. I've made the classical diction more a modern expression, but retaining the majestic power of Euripides' vision. And we've done a couple readings in New York to incredible results. So we feel pretty good about this, that it's not going to be ho-hum, we're so sorry for you, but more, this is really interesting and this speaks to our moment. I kind of see it, the play that I've written, like holding up an ancient mirror wherein we see reflections of our own time.
Okay. Jumping to a whole other part of your life, or at least related but not the actual production, you are indeed a woman of the theater. There is virtually no aspect of it that you have not only done, but done a lot. Could you talk first about how you got into this? And then we'll start pressing you about the pieces. But how did you, a nice woman like you, get into this?
Well, I wanted to be a dancer. It was just something I needed to do, and I remember being 6 years old, and there was going to be a television program of Edward Villela and Patricia McBride on TV, and my mother said, you know, you can stay up late and watch them dance. I wasn't able to dance because I had a heart murmur, so I had to wait until I was older, and I stayed up as long as I could and fell asleep on the couch in front of the TV, and she awakened me and said, it's on, and I said, that's okay. I already know all about it. So then I studied ballet, and we moved to Indianapolis, and I met the first real artist, my teacher, Carl Kaufman, who had a profound effect on me, and he actually let me help him stage a ballet, conceive of a ballet, actually, not stage it, but think about it. He did very innovative works. And I danced always the character parts. I was always doing that. Never the swan queen, but the character roles. So then I went to college, and then I auditioned for my first Broadway show after college and got in as the swing girl on the Broadway show of the Rothschilds, and did a lot of theater as a performer, and I got into choreography, and one thing led to another, and I started, I worked on Broadway, and I staged Sunday in the Park with George, the Sondheim musical, with Bernadette Peters, and I started doing my own work, and then I started talking in the studio, and then I was writing. And I went to New School in creative writing and got an MFA in fiction, and et cetera, et cetera. I think what joins it all together, it's all about storytelling. Even my dancing was about storytelling, so it's all related.
Storytelling?
Yes.
Okay, I'll have to think about that. I'll come back to that in a few minutes. But let's talk about performing for a minute, which is what most of us
right.
have the most experience with. the front stage. And I suspect one of the things we're most curious about is some of the things that go on backstage, et cetera. But just talking about that experience, can you talk for a minute about the things about performance that for you are the most challenging and the most compelling?
I think for an actor, it's so important to be given the agency and opportunity in rehearsal to plumb the depths of a character, to ask questions, to figure out, what am I trying to do to the other person? What is my objective? This is what we're known for in living room theater, is to give the actors lots of room to experiment and try things out. We don't just block the play and run it 100 times. We investigate it, we change our minds, we make everybody feel safe in a room. And then there is this X factor that you can't describe. Stephanie knows what that is. It's just something happens where all the work comes together with this other thing, and I don't know what it is. It's a mystery, as they say in Shakespeare in Love. It's a mystery, we don't know why it works. That's really exciting.
You don't have to answer this question, but I'll take a shot at it. Could you talk about the most terrifying moment you ever had as a performer?
Yes, I can. Only one?
No, the most. We'll go to the others after the most.
Well, no. I guess it was recently. I played Nora in A Doll's House Part 2 by Lucas Nath, a brilliant play that looks at what happens after 15 years from the end of A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. Nora comes on and has like this 3.5-page monologue talking about everything that's been going on. I knew it cold. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. And then I skipped ahead and I realized it, and Janice Young was sitting there and she looked at me terrified, like, I can't help you. I know, I can't help you. And so I realized I had to cut and paste what the audience needed to know. And I somehow got through it. I got through the rest of the play, and then after it was over, after I took my bow, I burst into tears.
Can you talk about the most exhilarating moment?
I think it was at the Public Theater in New York. I was doing something called Mrs. Beaton, who was the ghost of Mrs. Beaton. Mrs. Beaton was like Martha Stewart of the Victorian age, if you know who she is. Anyway, this playwright wrote a hilarious monologue for her. And I was doing it, and the audience they were eating me alive, which is why Dionysus is the god of the theater. Because Dionysus is eaten alive. He's torn apart and his body is thrown on the fields. I suddenly understood Dionysus. And I wanted to live in that moment. That's that kind of moment for a performer is just exhilarating. You know, there's really nothing like it.
You have experienced, more than anyone I know, personally or not personally, all aspects of the theater, including running a theater in New York, if I understand, living room theater, the theater here, which is its own world.
Yeah.
You've performed, you've directed, you've written.
Right.
What is it about the theater that is so compelling for you that every dimension of it has been something you've actually taken on to do?
Well, you're interested in the theater too.
Yeah.
And we could all answer that question. What do we like about the theater? I mean, I don't know.
Let me interrupt you, but
Yeah.
I have not written for it, performed in it, directed it, managed a theater company. Yeah, I may have wanted to, and I know very few people who have done all of that. There are certainly people in the theater who've done a lot. Among others, people, the greats. Shakespeare was an actor. He was in
and
a
a
theater
manager.
company.
Yeah.
They ran their own company.
It's a good
Molière,
model.
The same, right. But I can't think of anyone who has covered that waterfront quite as thoroughly and deeply as you have.
Thank you. That's
Okay.
very kind. Alan, my husband, who was the co-founder and co-artistic director of Living Theater, we know a lot of people who do this. I mean, Austin Pendleton comes to mind, the great actor who directs and writes and,
Runs a company and in both New York City and Bennington, Vermont.
No.
Has a pool that they
No.
use as their setting.
No. Yeah. Again, I think it's the theater gives us this extraordinary ability to be with you live, to use a variety, you could say, a variety of lies that tell the truth, that make us be together and consider things that maybe we're afraid to consider on our own. And I think that is a transformative experience. I think there are a lot of answers to that question. This is one answer.
We just want yours,
Well, that's
and that's a wonderful one.
and when I go home tonight, I'm going to think of all the things I should have said.
And I will think of all the questions. I could ask.
What do you like about the theater? What do you look for?
Well, it's an enormously intense and powerful art. It just seems to me all art has power, at least for me. In the verbal arts, there's poetry, fiction, and obviously nonfiction. There's nothing quite to me as powerful as what happens when words, a script, is through production transformed into this very powerful thing. And there's the sexiness of it, the stardom of it, the spectacle of it, the range of talent that's evident. I mean, everyone here, I'm sure, can think of an actor or actress who has absolutely amazed them in terms of the range of things they're able to do so perfectly and so incredibly. I don't know of any art, and most art for me is very powerful, but theater is in a class by itself. That's pretty impressive. And then there are the monumental works. I could spend my whole life reading and thinking about King Lear, and I mean it. It's an astonishing thing, amazing thing, and I can't imagine it in any other form. So, not that there's anything wrong with poetry and fiction and nonfiction and all the rest, but theater is magical.
Well, theater encapsulates poetry and prose and setting.
But it's none of them. And for me, one of the worst things you can do to a play is to turn it into a poem, which is one of the things that a lot of people think you should do. If you just somehow capture the lines and the rhythms and the patterns and all the rest.
No.
So there are a lot of ways to kill it. But I want to, I can come back and ask a million more questions, but I really want the people here to have a chance to get at what they want to hear about. So we can go back and forth, but let me turn it this way. I will repeat the question. So come on, we're up here doing art. There you are. Yes.
I was haven't experienced it, would be great for them to know about it.
Did everybody hear the question? Good, great.
We really didn't intend to start a theater company. That was the thing. We were having a big wedding anniversary, Alan and I, and we thought, well, you know, we have this house in Vermont, let's invite our friends up, and let's do a play, and let's do Chekhov. And
again, the most difficult playwright. First it's the hardest play,
but the
then it's the
most
hardest playwright.
beloved playwright for actors. So we invited our brilliant friends. Alan and I have worked in the theater a long time, so we know a lot of great people who want to escape New York in the summer heat. So they came up, and we don't have a theater, we don't have a building. So I figured, well, the play is set in outdoors, outdoors, indoors, indoors, 4 acts. So the first act was in our garden, second act was in the side yard, and the third and fourth act were in our living room that we emptied of furniture. We had 20 people a night, our friends in North Bennington, and we had a ball. And it was this moving audiences around that, as a director, I was blown away by the power of intimacy, the power of not having that separation of a proscenium where you feel like, oh, this is a lie, this is distant, the actors are over there. We're like right here. I'm having a scene here in front of you. And that was astonishing. And our North Bennington's friends said, well, so you're coming, what are you doing next year? So we did Uncle Vanya. And that's how it began. And people gave us a little money. We still don't our budgets, you would laugh to know what our budgets are. We are supported by very generous people who give us a bit of money to work with every summer. So we moved, we still kept doing outdoors, indoors. We worked in the carriage barn of Park McCullough, if you've ever been there. There are 4 spaces. It's like $1 million set. I mean, it's better than a theater. And then, well, I'd always seen this on our property. We're adjacent to Park McCullough because Alan McCullough is related to the McCullough clan. So we have this house, this farmhouse of 6 bedrooms, and there's always been this empty swimming pool on the property. First time I saw it, I said, Alan, we gotta do a play in there. That was 1984. So we started doing plays in the pool. We justified the deep end with the shallow end with a stage. We're down in the stage, the actors, and the audience. Everybody has a front row seat around the edge. Oh my God, it is incredible for the actors and for the audience. It's astonishing. It's outdoors, it's lovely, it's beautiful. All the actors live in our house, which can be fun, usually, not always. So it's this, we get to rehearse during the day and then cook together and eat together and talk about what happened in rehearsal. And we started to call, right from the beginning, we called it Chekhov Camp because it was really like being at camp, the best kind of camp. You know, and a lot of us older theater workers, we've been through the commercial theater, we've done film, we've done Broadway, we've done off-Broadway. This was a chance to get back to that dream of making theater together. Hey kids, let's put on a show. Except we're professionals now, and we really know what we're doing. So that is the conundrum of living room theater that has this special magic, and I think magic for the audience too. Without that distance of the proscenium, you really, I think Ray's shaking his head. He knows what that is. It's a beautiful experience. You're right there with us. You're living and breathing. And around the pool, you also see it's on 4 sides. So you see your neighbors across the way. You're like gods watching, you know.
You have to see this pool. It's on a slant.
It's a deep, old
And
pool.
it goes way down. And when you told me when I met you at your place, that's where it's going to be performed,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh my God. And that's part of what it's like dealing with this woman is this unbelievable, I mean, she just plows right through one spectacular accomplishment after another and daunting and impossible, yeah, next. And when you see the setting that she obviously turns into art, it's wonderful to see it before. So I saw it just recently, and there's nothing, it's as it is, an abandoned, terrifying gouge on a diagonal into God knows where. And then I'm sitting and having coffee and meeting and talking to her and trying to figure out how in the world does one do justice to this person and enable her to present herself. And all of a sudden, in the place and the space and it only gets harder to think about how to make the range and daring imagination of this person become evident. I'm going to ask you one more question and then open it up.
Can I just say?
Sure.
Alan and I do this together. I've learned so much from my husband, who's an extraordinary actor, and he also knows how to make things with hammers and nails and runs the electric wires so we have lights. And also, you know, you're forgetting all the angst that's involved with this,
Yeah.
so the stress.
Yeah.
I don't walk around thinking how daring and creative I am. You know, I think about solving problems. I think about asking questions. I think about following the little whispery voice in my head that always has good ideas if I listen to it. That is, I think, what I've learned about being an artist, is to listen to those ideas that come from a wellspring of I don't know what, unconscious, everything I've learned, everything I've seen. Yeah, so that's...
Has that voice ever betrayed you?
No, except when it's paranoid. We all know what that's like,
Sure.
right? But not about ideas. I mean, I will follow an idea down and really chase it. When I'm writing, I'll chase it down and see where it leads. That is my duty as an artist, is just chase down questions and not necessarily get answers, but to explore all the questions in their fullness.
Okay, I'll get my time again, but I want to turn it over now to all of you, with a chance to ask. Why don't you just speak up? I'll try to repeat the question. If
My question is, do you feel that the best plays are ones that don't come to an end, but leave you wondering where it all goes?
I assume you all heard that.
This is Chekhov's innovation. This is, Chekhov leaves you not with a resolution, but that life goes on and you don't know what's going to happen. A melodrama, right? A Victorian melodrama, a Dickens verse, a play or a story. Well, this is the villain, this is the protagonist. In Chekhov, I learned so much as a person and as an artist, because in Chekhov, every character is right in his or her own way. That's also true of Shakespeare. But that's a profound lesson. His fiction, too, is like that. His fiction just ends. There's no resolution to the conflicts. things happen, and you're left struggling with, what's going to happen. Trojan Women also ends, it has an ending, but there's still a future that you're not going to see, but that you're left with the predicament.
If I could just make another comment. Do you find that the observers of the theater, are they disturbed by the fact it didn't have a nice ending, or are they enthralled with the fact that
Some, yes, some no. As far as tragedy goes, this is something I want to talk about too, because Chekhov plays can be very sad. Pardon me. I will have water. We all want happy endings in life. We all do in our lives. But tragedy takes our measure as human beings, as a culture. That's why it's survived.
Along those lines, I imagine over the years there's been characters that you've acted where the play's over and it's hard to shake the emotion. Can you enlighten us on one in particular that it took me days to get over or hours? Like anything that come into mind as far as that goes?
Last year in Constellations, it's a play by Nick Payne. And I played an astrophysicist who decides she has glioblastoma multiforme. I can't believe I remembered that. And I had all the science lines in that play, and I'm not a science person, but she opts for assisted suicide. And that was a difficult. I wanted to run away from those thoughts every night afterwards. It was a lot. And at a certain age, you begin to think about death anyway, right? So it has stayed with me all year.
I can hear it in your voice still.
Yeah.
You mentioned that when you're in theater, you take pride in letting the actors explore the characters. Mm-hmm. But as a director, at some point, don't you have to corral that together?
Totally.
I saw once on Broadway a production of Othello with Glenda Jackson and Christopher Plummer. Mm. And they never decided who was in charge of that play. It was just a duel to the death. And sort of a mess because they were both exploring it and wanting to give in. So if one of these guys exploring, it might be in conflict with somebody else. At one point, do you pull it in, or do you?
Yes, I do. As a choreographer, boom, 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 5, 6, 7, 8. This is what I want to see. But it's not the theater isn't a democracy, it's an autocracy. The director's in charge and the play is in charge. You've got the play and you've got the director. Absolutely. And the director has a vision and the director needs to realize that vision.
What sort of time frame do you give for people to explore things? Because at some point, if you let go on too long, that characterization will calcify.
Usually, that's casting. That's about casting. That's about casting actors who are alive in the moment and their performances don't calcify. They can do the blocking, but they're still alive every night, and there might be a little change in how they say a line or whatnot. But I think the other thing is that not all sections of a play require in-depth investigation. There are parts of a play that will be challenging for an actor to wrap their minds around. So those are the sections that, you keep working on. Yeah. It works out. Again, it's a mystery how.
Well, it also takes some talent, as you would be the first to acknowledge.
Yeah, and we are graced with wonderful actors. We really get some wonderful people to do the work. And we share a view, usually we share a view about how to work, even though everyone works a little bit differently. That's one challenge for a director, is because everybody's different. Each actor has a whole backstory, who they are, what they've done. You know, it's, you have to really negotiate everybody's personality.
A long time ago, I directed an awful lot of children's plays. And there was this one child from Danby who I realized he had a mental condition. And the condition was she couldn't understand you if you showed it to her. You had to verbalize it and explain it to her. So you couldn't say, here, you do this step over this. You had to actually give her directions and then she could do it. And it sort of taught me that one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody's different, for sure.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
I've been to a lot of Broadway plays, love them. The energy is just incredible. And sometimes the audience is like really energized in there, and sometimes the audience feels very flat. Do you as an actor and the actors on stage, do you pick up on that?
Totally.
And
This is
does
an
it affect-
interactive art.
Right. Does it affect?
It means a lot to an actor how the audience is engaged. If everyone's, you know, the paranoid thinking starts to come in. It's like they hate us. They hate what I'm doing. They hate me especially. you know. But and you're wrong. Some audiences are just more interior, or they've had a cocktail at dinner. You know, you just never know, and so you have to do your work.
But you sense that.
You do, we do, especially in living room theater. It's so intimate. We get it. We get it. But I have to say, in the pool, because we're down low, you guys, you have to see this. It's
Trust
amazing.
me, you have to see this pool, yeah.
We feel so safe with each other. Like we know you're there, but no, we're really having a scene now, and
Yeah.
you know, it's wonderful for the actors and great for the audience. I mean, our audiences every year say, "What are you doing in the pool next year?"
So it sounds like that energy level you're getting from each other rather than the audience, because they're there, but...
But we
you
get it from the audience.
Even being down in the pool.
Oh yeah, someone was checking their phone. And we were all livid in one performance. Yeah, we know you're there. We've got antenna. We're not totally subsumed in the work. That's another mystery about acting. We know where we are. We're alive. We're not crazy. You know, we're in it. But we're aware of the audience. It's an interactive art. And sometimes when like my experience at the Public Theater, the audience affected me, and I just went farther and better and deeper and louder, and I thought of things I hadn't thought of before to do, and I tried them, and they loved it, and so I went on and I tried something else. It's very exciting. It's so exciting. You're not passive as a theater goer. Your energy comes to us on the stage. It's very exciting. It's like nothing else. I mean, this art has survived for a reason, a good reason, you know?
You've acted in situations where you're not part of a company, I assume.
Yes.
Right. But a huge amount of your creative work in the theater has been with a company, or maybe not.
Well, Living Room Theater, this is our 12th season.
Yeah. So
that's a lot of years.
And some of the most astonishing moments in theater history have involved companies. Moliere, Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And that mattered. I mean, knowing the performers. I mean, Shakespeare, when he wrote, knew who was going to play Falstaff, probably. And in some sense, Falstaff comes out of that. So the experience of a company is its own quite fascinating world. People in high intensity, with high stakes, under huge pressure, living and working together, I would imagine, can be extremely complicated at any given moment.
It can.
At the same time, it's often part of theater history that's most remarkable.
You know, you're making me feel like living room theater is part of this continuum.
Yes, it is.
From Shakespeare, which is highly
Also
flattering.
Molière, well, you might as well throw Molière in either, who's no
Molière.
Piper. The two of them were in companies.
Yes.
So that so much of one can imagine was the power of the work, not just we don't have the performances, but we do have the great accomplishments as playwrights. And in both cases, they were writing for very real people. Real situations theatrically that they...
And I did write Her Name Means Memory with specific actors in mind who will be in the performance. And I would just like to say, I feel like I've never written anything like this before. And it's what I want to be remembered for. And I would like other companies to do it around America, just because I think it's something we need right now. But anyway, we have a lot of, we have actors, I think Mike Broadhurst has done like 8 of our shows, and we have seen him grow as an actor. He just was on Succession this year, you know. He's just flowered. I think we all have. We all have learned so much by doing great plays.
Yes, and that's interesting, the choice of the play. And you have taken on, certainly. And in a way, one might wonder why one wouldn't. I mean, why wouldn't one take on the work? Because
a lot of commercial theaters think audiences want to see something funny and happy and a mystery and, you know, and I don't want to think of an audience like that. I want to think of an audience as being interested in the life that they're leading, which is full and complex and deep and funny and hilarious and ironic and challenging and horrible and wonderful, and the plays should reflect the lives we're living, I think. And the great plays do that.
But they also do something else that's the opposite, which is the tyrant in life can go see Macbeth and somehow is able to experience that in a way that has nothing to do with their life, apparently. This is one of the questions that I've often heard asked about the illusion of theater or the power of theater, that one's own immediate life experience somehow does not, even in striking examples of where it should, does not interfere with the power of the work.
Yeah.
I mean, how can a thug go to see a tragedy and somehow weep when their lives seem to be a pale imitation of the very thug that they're... So
it's a conundrum. That's a paradox.
Right, that's just a fancy word for not answering.
Well, think about someone in world politics you don't like very much. And imagine inviting them to see, well, let's see, what would it be? What would be a good play for one of our least favorite people?
Hamlet will do.
Hamlet, okay. I mean, what do you...
I mean, you would call Hamlet...
They'd fall asleep, probably.
Yeah, but it's...
I mean, what is that poem about that was written about a woman who visited a tyrant in South America, and he had her over for dinner, and then he brought out a package of human ears that he had cut off of people.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's like, you know, that's why plays need to be written about tyrants. We need to be able to identify tyrants. And in America, then we have a choice about what we do about those tyrants, because we can vote.
Yes, go ahead.
I was wondering if you could talk about how you come up with ideas for plays. I mean, I understand for the show that's this summer, but do you have a process, or is it like how do you come up with ideas for writing your material?
Well, for the plays that I don't write, we read a lot of plays. We go to the drama bookshop and sit there for hours and read plays and buy a lot of plays. And we see theater, we see new plays, and what can we handle? What would be good in the pool? What's good in the pool isn't Chekhov, nothing realistic. It has to be something that has an imaginative space that it occupies. We can't have, it's not a coffee cup drama space. It's a space of wonder. And for Trojan women, it's a paddock where women are being imprisoned until they're shipped off to Greece to be slaves. So it's kind of perfect. Beautiful, but perfect, you know. And as far as writing a play, I wrote a family play. Everybody needs to do that, right? I was compelled to do that. I think it's, again, it's that whispery voice that asks a question that says, why don't you do this? What about that? Oh, okay. Sometimes it works out to be something worthwhile to share with the world. Sometimes it doesn't. So my magic drawer is full of potentials, which I ransacked to write this play, actually, because I had a fellowship in Spain to write. And Spain has a very dark history, you know, with Franco. And before that, I mean, it's been invaded by the Visigoths and the Romans and the Moors. I mean, it was a culture that lived beautifully under Moorish rule until the Christians decided to kill all non-believers. So there's a tremendous amount of pain in Spain, mostly on the plain. And I wrote a lot of poems, which I've used in Her Name Means Memory, because they fit right into the world of the play.
It seems like over time, audience's patience is less than it was. Camelot, My Fair Lady are both like over 3 hours, each of them. And more of the plays these days seem to be 90 minutes and no intermission. And I don't know if you buck that trend or you go with it, or how you approach, or do you just say, my play is just going to take as long as it takes to tell?
Mm-hmm. Trojan Women, Euripides' Trojan Women, is a very short play. Chekhov plays, we had intermissions because they're 4 acts long. You know, we did an evening of 2 1-acts. We had an intermission. I mean, you know. Yeah, Broadway. I believe it was the critic on Broadway. What's his name, Alan? What's his name? He's no longer there, but he said, I only want to see plays that are 90 minutes. And so everybody went, okay. And that's why that happened. But yes, I mean, you've had this experience when you watch an old movie. Don't they seem very much slower than what we're used to? Not as many cuts and edits as what we're used to. Things are going a bit faster all around, I think.
I think the younger people are see editing and watching editing and limited attention spans anyway, and if they can't get the gist of it right away, it's on to the next thing. You see it all the time. People really good.
And then there's a thing about being in the theater, right? When you're at a live theater event, do you feel a responsibility to attend? That's an art, being an audience member. To attend, to really attend, and I don't mean just go, I mean really open to the experience. Do you feel that when you go?
Well, also, like with the living room theater, it's so intimate that two things happen. First of all, you can't leave some movies on the phone. But you also, you were reminded to turn it off, but you don't have it. To me, it's like you're given permission not. That's such a relief. And I suspect that might be true for a lot of people, young and old, just to be given that time where you don't have to do anything but pay attention. And you want to, because it'd be too obvious if you weren't.
We just saw a play off Broadway, The Signature, 10 days ago called The Comeuppance by Brandon
Jacobs Jenkins.
It was 2 hours and 10 minutes long without an intermission. In a beautiful little theater, intimate, and nobody moved a muscle.
Yeah.
Until it was, now, and that speaks to the quality of the play, production, the acting. If you're sitting and watching a terrible, whatever it is, it's already too long. 5 minutes is too long.
It's true. I mean, one of my choreography exercises is take one step in 1 minute. That's a long time, a minute. That's a really long, stage time feels longer when it's slow.
I'll tell you the other version of that stage time is when you start teaching and you walk into the room and you ask a question and there's silence. And if it's a good question, of course, they should have to think about it, but you don't give them more than 5 seconds to think about it because you're hysterical that they're talking already. So there are these performance arts in a way, where one sense of time and the tensions and learning how to feel time in those situations that isn't completely off. That must be its own craft.
Yeah, and I think the director is the one who is saying, keeping the actors moving through their actions so that there isn't a lull. And you work on that as you do run-throughs. You begin to, and the actors feel that. They know when they're taking too long and when they're not. Well, some.
Have you ever made a really bad casting decision?
Yes.
Oh, you're thinking of a specific person.
Oh,
I'm thinking
end of discussion.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what do you do?
Well, it's chemistry, it's often about chemistry. I think I was being flippant. I think it is the job of the director to be professional and work with the other professional to achieve the objectives of every scene and every character. And that is the job when it doesn't go well. In our situation, we really can't fire someone because we don't have time. We can't suddenly grab someone else from New York. Yeah, so I think it's just about living through it and finding. It's a spiritual exercise, really. It's a human exercise in getting along. I mean, you all have worked in jobs when you don't get along with someone, I'm sure, right? Everybody has this experience. So it's a spiritual exercise to find the way through, to find what you do connect to with someone. I'm making it sound like I'm a saint or something. I'm not. I'm very emotional, and it's a challenge.
Would never have guessed that. Have there been moments for you in any capacity? So you've performed with all of that. You've run operations. That is, you've not only directed, you've also managed companies, spaces, etc. Has there been a moment that when it all came together with a very special power for you, or is that routinely what happens?
Oh, you just never know. A dress rehearsal can go very badly. In fact, there's a superstition. A bad dress rehearsal means a good show, a good opening night. But that can also not be true. No, I don't think any production is ever perfect. I'm sure you've seen plays where you're like, oh, I loved the acting. Those costumes weren't very good, or or this one I didn't like, or that. This is a monumental effort to make something with living, breathing people who, where the costume designer has an idea, and the set designer has a different idea, and the lighting doesn't work, and you don't have a theater, and it starts to rain, and you're in the pool, and it's, when it comes together, it is fantastic, and everybody feels it, It's a great communal experience, I think.
And its history bears that out. I mean, the history of theater has ranged, of course, from very uncommunal. Broadway is not exactly what one would call a communal experience.
No.
But
Broadway's a business.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas the origins of theater had huge, enormous relationships to
each other.
The most profound events of the community. And the idea of community that theater creates is fascinating. Even in a city like New York, where you don't typically think about community, you think more of isolated people coming together, but not some of the most powerful. I'm trying to remember a political, this is pre-Trump, believe it or not, there were awful things before him. That was not a political statement. But the extent to which it's a place in which a public experiences together, the idea of experiencing together intense emotion about things that matter, sometimes happens in theater, particularly when it is resonant. Not necessarily in that case, but when it's resonant with things that are going on in the world. Mm-hmm. There is really nothing quite like that.
Yeah,
in the city
and in private life. In people's private lives. We did the world premiere of Chuck Mee's Adam and Evie, which is about young love. And there were some sexy parts that we didn't know what would happen with our Vermont audience if it was too wild. And we were sort of on pins and needles about that. And afterwards, there was one gentleman who came to see it who had walked out of Vanya, Uncle Vanya, because there was a fake gunshot out as part of the play. We thought, oh, and then he walked into Adam and Eve, and we're like, oh my God, he's going to hate this. This is so wild. He stayed afterwards and talked to the company for 20 minutes about how he courted his wife. And full of emotion, we were all weeping. So you just never know how people are going to respond. We did an incredible version of Three Sisters, the American premiere of an Irish version of Three Sisters set in at the end of the Troubles in Ireland. It was brilliant. And I think everybody gained knowledge about the Troubles because of it. It was a wonderful experience for all of us.
And help clarify Chekhov's world for the audience, where, you know, who are the soldiers and Three Sisters, and why are they in this town, and what's it about? And, I mean, yes, they're soldiers, but these were British soldiers intermingling with the Irish family, and all of a sudden it was very clear.
Yeah.
The politics of that play became very clear.
Because it's closer to our time than Russia in 1896, which if you don't have an understanding of that, you might miss all of the inferences of the politics of that time.
Please.
On the other hand, the Uncle Vanya and the cherry orchard set in the McCullough carriage house was perfect and really illuminated what was what we know of today through that into their time and vice versa.
The loss of history, that they had the cherry orchard, they had to give up their beautiful farm and cherry orchard.
Yes, and inequality and role of women, all kinds of things.
Great writer, the best.
You've done almost everything imaginable that one can do in the theater. You've performed, you've directed, you've run a company, you've used a swimming pool. Is there something you haven't done that you want to do still?
I love performing. I'd like to perform more. I have a book that I'm writing that I'd like to finish.
Can you talk about the book at all? I realize that maybe the last thing you would want to do, but what is it? Is it a novel?
It's a novel. It's a novel. And part of it won first prize in my MFA program for fiction, which it was a feather in my cap that is beginning to wilt because it's been a while and I really need to finish it. But it's a story about all my stories are about women. All my plays are about women. You know, I feel I know there are men in the plays and the stories, but I feel like female protagonists have.
Why is that?
I think I could give a political answer, which I think is, we all know why it's important that there are female protagonists, but also I feel it's something I understand. And it's a piece of the world that's not in the world enough. I think that's changing. Anyway, it's about an artist. It's about a dancer who goes back to her hometown to see her first mentor. And she comes to terms with her mother, her art, her love life, and everything in this span of 5 days. And there's a little play inside of the novel. So I'd like to finish that.
That's cheating, so you've got them both. You've got theater and embedded in fiction. Good for you. Wonderful. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Just wondering, you said you've been involved with something in the park with George, and you talked about plays in the pool. Are you attracted to small casts, large casts? Because they do both. I mean, both work, and in this area, Weston tends to go to larger casts, and Dorset certainly goes to smaller ones. Could be just their models or their budgets or whatever. But what attracts you, or do you have any preference?
Well, we don't have a lot of money. But this year, it's 9 actors, and most of them are equity.
What is that?
That they're in the union of professional acting, which means we pay them an equity salary with health benefits as well. So we need every donation we can get. And we only have 60 seats around the pool. So do the math. So
Would you
that's it.
please sign me up for this?
Yeah, so after the pandemic, we did a 4-character play, Doll's House Part 2. Last year, we did a 6-character play. This year, there are 9 actors. We'll probably have to do a small play next year because we'll be broke.
There is a difference in the intimacy. I saw a production of the Tin Man Players that was dancing in unison. It was in a church. It held like 35, 40 people. A whole different deal. And I saw it on Broadway with the Irish company. Whole different deal.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a real beauty to being together, close, in a small group. It's nice.
Yes.
Following up on that with a different thrust, do you ever think there's sort of a similarity to this to chamber music?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think when a play, I am very influenced by music, and in fact, when I direct something, I first listen to music before I do anything. I feel, I choose the music for the scenes. It tells me emotionally what I'm going for. It's not it's not logical.
Don't look at me like that.
It's a feel. And as a dancer, I think it's sort of my go-to, you know. Yes, and I think it should be the staging and the rhythm of a scene is very much, I'm always after a kind of musical rhythm. That one scene has one rhythm and the next scene is a different rhythm, you know, so to chart that is very important to me.
You've been involved in almost every conceivable aspect of theater, many, many aspects. Is there any that has a particular intensity for you, as you think about them all? How do you think about them in relation to each other?
Thinking about the role I'm playing? The role I'm playing?
No. What I'm asking is you've directed, you've acted, you sometimes all at the same time, you've run a theater company. Those are all vastly connected in different things.
Well, I think it's like when you're having a dinner party and you have to decide what it is you're going to make, what your menu is, and what your decor is going to be. It's a lot like that. Some plays, I'll read it and say, I'm not going to be in this. I don't even know that I want to direct this. Somebody else will be better at that than me. Other times I'll know I have to play Nora in Doll's House Part 2, or I have to direct this play. I think it's just a reckoning with what your skill set is. You know, you're having, the boss over for dinner, and you've never cooked Chateaubriand. You're not going to make that. You're going to do something that's your strength, right? Other times, I think it's worthwhile experimenting.
Sure.
With something that scares you. And in fact, I think something that scares me is usually what I'll do, like this year. It scares me a little. I think that's good.
Are you acting in it as well?
No. I'm directing it, which is the final edit of the script, I have incredible actors. Alan will play Menelaus, husband of Helen of Troy. We have wonderful actors. We did a residency at Bennington College on the script this January, which was great. I changed a lot of the play. Cut things, added things. It's great. It's really helpful.
Do you have a dress rehearsal that people can attend?
No.
Okay. Checking.
No. You're going to have the full experience.
The reason I mention that is that one of the things that, for some of us about the theater that's fascinating is the behind the scenes
Yeah.
of it, and getting some sense of how this comes to fruition.
Yes, and for our big donors, we allow that.
Puts me in my
So
place.
there you go. And by big, it's not that big. Do we want to address something that people always ask?
Go right ahead.
Everyone always asks this question. How do actors memorize their lines? Is that a question you would like to know the answer to? Okay, I have one possible answer. Stephanie's a wonderful actress who worked at Hubbard Hall with Alan. Okay, it's not like, we were just talking beforehand, it's not like you had to get up in school and memorize your thing and stand there stiffly. When you work on a play, you have blocking. So you know that when you pick up this glass, you are going to say this line, "I'm sorry, I'm thirsty." It's all body related. It's all about space, where you are in the space. That helps you remember the lines. And the reason I went up in Doll's House Part 2 is that there was a similar staging twice. And when I did that similar staging, I jumped ahead to the second instead of the first. And that was my body telling me I was farther along in the speech than I actually was. So it's all about your body and where you are in space. This is very handy. I mean, you have to work on the lines. You do have to memorize the lines. But then you're with another actor, and it seems to work out pretty well. So there you go.
It helps to be able to call out, what's my home?
Do you ever do that?
In rehearsal, usually, yes, in rehearsal, the practice is this, you go up on your line in rehearsal and the stage manager waits until you say line, because there's always a chance you'll get it. Then the stage manager will tell you what the line is. Yeah.
Anyone? Yes.
Using the pool, do you not worry about rain?
Yes. We do. And we have the Park McCullough Carriage Barn as our...
Okay, so that
We can move into the barn.
so you're safe to get tickets for something without knowing.
Yes, and usually we just take your reservation and we take on faith that you will show up and pay us. Because we only have 60 seats. Even in the carriage barn, there's only room for 60.
What are the dates?
They're on I think Alan gave you a
Okay.
flyer.
Just checking.
Yeah. Come the first week.
Oh, the first week, why?
Yeah, because everyone waits till the second and you won't get in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please.
What do you do with the water in the pool after it rains?
There's a drain.
It hasn't held water since 1976.
Alan swam in that pool when he was 8. Yeah, it was a family pool. Yeah. Well, I hope this has
Yes.
been interesting.
Yes.